Hey, it's Jim Edenfield. Welcome back to the Invest Success Podcast. We're here at Shoot Social Studios. It's still a tongue twister. Here with our buddy, Mr. Cade Hansen, for another episode of Invest Success. We got to come up with a title of this, but anyway.
It's the Invest Success Podcast right now.
That's the way it works.
I'm Tim Emery. You were going to introduce me eventually, weren't you?
Yeah, I was going to get there.
All right, just checking.
Jim, I'm here with my partner, my coach, my mentor, my friend, Mr. Tim Emery, who's been with Invest Success since 2016. We all started by John Fisher over 20 years ago. He watched The Late Night Guru. I watched Carlton Sheets. He watched Northern. He went out and spent a lot of money developing this core or taking the courses and found out this doesn't cut it in Denver. So he took all the money, all the course material he spent money on and developed a course that works in Denver. And he started with the Breakfast Club first, like I say, over 20 years ago. And then after a while, he developed the Invest Success mentorship program. And Tim kind of fell into the reins when John left us way too soon.
Yep, he did.
And he died of cancer. He was diagnosed and went almost immediately. And Tim was like, this is such a great program. What's going to happen? And Lauren Fisher, his wife, who we're still friends with today, she comes to the Breakfast Club. She's like, I'm going to let it die. And Tim's like, no, you're not. So that's how Tim kind of stepped into the program. So.
Yeah. But let's talk today. Let's get right into the topic of scope of work. How do you build a scope of work? So if you haven't been a part of Invest Success and the podcast and you've seen the description, we're fix and flippers. And one of the most important aspects about fix and flipping is how do you work with your contractors? How do you make that seamless transition? Okay, because the biggest thing that we get is, oh, my contractor did this. My contractor did this. They didn't listen to me. There are all kinds of contractor issues that you always hear about. So how do you get rid of that issue? And it's by building a scope of work. SOW, or scope of work, is really important. And that really lays out the plan. You got to have a plan when you're flipping a house, okay? You just can't come in to flip a house, walk through it, and say, okay, this is what's going to happen. It's going to change like that, right? It just doesn't happen. So how do you do that? How do you build a scope of work? And that's what we're going to go through today. So, Jim, we've been together long enough. And everybody's got a little different aspects of how to build a scope of work, but you got to build a scope of work. There are a bunch of different types. You can write it out as a paragraph, which can get a little confusing. You can write it out all on a spreadsheet, which isn't a bad way to do it. That's a better way to track it. You can write it out as what I like to call an outline type situation, right? I'm a late 80s kid, and we were always taught how to write outlines. Whenever you were doing a story or English or anything like that, you wrote an outline. So I write an outline version of a scope of work. So, Jim, what's your most important way you write scope of work? So what do you really think is important?
I like the line item and spreadsheet because you can put prices, and I'm a spreadsheets guy. You're a word guy.
Yeah, you're a nerd, and I'm not.
And we meet in the middle. I kind of like spreadsheets because you can do a lot of math automatically with it. What you give us to our contractors, it works. It's very simple language. I'm going to provide the appliances. You're going to provide the glue, the sheetrock, the mud. We want the outside painted white with gray. We want bathroom to the far left back corner. We'll talk about naming those. We spelled out. I'm going to do this. You're going to do that. I'm paying for this. You're paying for that. And here's our timeline. And, we say after you've learned it and you've done it, finding a project is easy. Finding the money is easy. After you've done it a couple times, you don't have to look for money. It's already ready to roll over. They're ready to go to. So money, property, finding that's easy. What will make or break you is that scope of work. And as he says 1,000 times a week, put it in writing. If you do a phone call and go, all right, I want you to, let's change the paint color, or we're going to do X to bathroom number 1, we're going to do X or Y to bathroom number 2. If it's a phone conversation or a text, come back at the end of the day. Tim's really good about that. Put an email in summary. This is what we change, or this is what we want to do. Put it in writing, because when later down the road and things are going a little, you walk into your project and this looks nothing like what I had envisioned, and they go, It was written in the scope of work. One of Tim's favorite stories. I'm gonna steal it
Oh,
before
no,
he does.
you're not. I get to tell it.
Okay.
I'm going to tell
You
this
said
story.
your stories were my stories.
They are your stories, but I'm going to tell this story because you talk too much sometimes.
I do.
But so I did a project a few years back, and things were going okay. Initially, the contractor and I walked through the house. His lead guy ended up the day before he was supposed to start work, ended up going on a bender and didn't show up. So they brought a new lead guy in. He read the scope of work. I didn't meet with him. He read the scope of work and already started to change things I had wanted different in the basement. So I had to go in there and get on the same page with him and get it designed right. So we got on the same page, and then about 5 weeks later, the GC lead comes to me and says, "Hey, when are you going to put the electrical in there?" And I looked at him. I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, Joe Bob told me that you were going to do you had an electrician coming in to rewire the house and do the electrical." I said, "No." So that's not on me. He goes, "Well, what do you mean?" "That's what Joe Bob said." So I said, "Let's go look at the scope of work." And sure enough, we looked at the scope of work, and fourth item was contractor will replace panel and ground all electrical. Well, we were 3 weeks from being done, and there was some panic in this kid's eyes. I left. I didn't do anything about it, and sure enough, a week later, we had electrical fixed. So that was a big deal, and with it black and white, it makes it that much easier so you don't have to freak out. And you don't have to say, "Well, he said, she said," because that always goes bad. So that's really one of the keys to why we do a good scope of work.
Yeah, putting in writing is one thing. And this is so important, the scope of work. We devote 2 classes over 4 hours on this specific subject. The 2 hours is scope of work before close, preparing up to that point where you get the keys, and the second class is, okay, you've got the keys, now sign. Never sign any contracts till you're holding the keys in your hand. But then 2 hours on the scope after, and nail it out. I mean, I've been on some of our current flips, and we do the scope of work. I had to print it out and tape it on one of the walls that's not being changed, like in the kitchen wall that's staying. We normally tear all the walls out, but I find a wall that I put the scope of work. I was designing the kitchen. I was in the house with our contractors, and we had some in the cabinets there, so they're like spacing them out. Because we were doing this nice island coming out. They had them lined up a certain way. I'm like, no, that's not going to work, because you got a little narrow one, the stove, and then these fat ones. Like, no, I took a draw. I do a computer draw out of the kitchen with each cabinet labeled where they're going. Put that on the wall. So you want to make it as easier. And like I say, Tim, he'll print the scope of work up and put it in the kitchen drawer. Mm-hmm. But sad part is we tear all the cabinets out. So
yeah. So here's a couple little tips on scope of work. You do want your scope of work as detailed as possible, but when you give it to a contractor at the beginning, you don't give him a version that's that detailed. Because if you give him a 12-page scope of work book, he's going to look at that. He's going to go, "That's going to cost me $200,000. Thank you very much." He'll never even open it. Okay. Learn this the hard way, by the way. One of our good contractors that tends to be around a lot, this is what he did. So we revamped the scope of work, pulled a lot of the real nitty-gritty detail out, and left that for a different one, and then just basically bigger items. Contractor is going to demo the kitchen. Okay. Owner will supply the cabinets. Okay. Contractor will put cabinets in place. So that type of stuff. You don't have to say, cabinet, 36-inch cabinet goes on right wall next to, the 12-inch cabinet. You don't need to get that specific in it, and don't get too much in the weeds, but you need to at least have enough that they understand what they're doing. So, again, that scope of work, you want to go through with the contractor before you sign them up to do the deal. And once they sign the deal, make sure they understand and make sure you're both on the same page.
Yep. And that's to start out the project. You want to do scope of work before and go, "I want this," and you want to have, if you got a good GC friend, say, "Walk the project with me." give me some feedback and fine tune it. And then when you say, okay, this is it, go out and share that with other people because you want bids. You know, we it's sad, but we kind of pass it off as a joke, but it's truth. Contractors have a shelf life. They're really great for a couple of projects. It's kind of like a marriage. In the dating phase, they want to impress you. They're going to do everything a little bit above and beyond. You get married, okay, what can I get away? What level can I work up to and keep Tim happy? Then after a while, after you've been married a while,
we're not married.
No, we're
what are
not
you talking
married,
about?
I'm just saying, as a contractor, we get accused of being like we're married, but we both like girls. Okay. Anyway, I digress. We digress. Y'all just blew my mind.
And now you're off track.
Yeah, I'm gone. Where was I? Contractors have a shelf life. So you want to interview several. And they're, as Tim says, they're artists. They don't know about doing all the back office in. They're out all day managing the projects. When they go back, they may hand it over to a wife, a VA, a secretary, say, here, take care of the books. But get that initial scope of work nailed down, get it out, get the same sheet of paper to several people, give me bids, and you're going to talk about how are we going to do money, how are we going to do that, and then as you gear up, getting closer to closing, you're going to know who you're going to go with, and then when you get the key, you say, okay, Tim, you won, sign the contract, here's some starting money, and starting money, that's a big issue. You never want to give them a big chunk of money up front. You want to give them enough to get started and get the project going.
Usually about 20-25%.
Yeah.
Also, don't give them any money until you own the house.
Or sign contracts.
Own the house. And then you can sign the contracts. But you can't sign the contract until you own the house, because if you do that, you've actually violated the fact that you haven't bought the house yet. So don't do that. Make sure you buy the house first. And then come up with a draw system. How are they going to get paid? How is the contractor? We've got one contractor that came in and said, okay, everything's great. He wanted 25% up front, got that. And then he, after the fact, said, okay, I'm going to hand you an invoice every Friday, and you're going to pay me every Monday. Well, if you learn how to do this business, you're using hard money lenders do not just give you money every 2 weeks. You have to go and you have to look at they have to bring an inspector out and say, the amount of work done is a percentage of this, and we'll give you a percentage of the money through the draw. So that the contractor has to know that and has to be able to deal with his business that way.
And another thing, the scope of work is a good roadmap. And yes, we're putting in writing. We're writing down everything we talk about. But as projects start, things evolve, things change. We've got a current project where we were going to put a bathroom between, like of a horseshoe area between two buildings. We talked about it for weeks. It worked that way. Then we got a call from our contractor. So can you do a Zoom real quick? He goes, look, we talked about doing it over here, but we got 2-3 different roof lines. How about if we just move it over here and add on here? He goes, it's a lot easier for me. It's going to be cheaper. We're like, great. So next thing we did was, okay, as per today's discussion, our bathroom is going to be off the wall of the bedroom, the west wall, so to speak. It's okay to ongoing changes. And if you get a good enough contractor that is out to be working with you, long relationship, he's going to say, I can do this better and cheaper for you. And this is a better solution. Tim's had another story. I'll steal real quick.
You can steal this.
He couldn't figure out what to do with this one window in the kitchen. And, he was like, what am I going to do? It looks at our neighbor's house right here. I can watch them washing dishes while I wash my dishes. Well, his contract, Tim couldn't figure it out. The contractor come in after doing so many flips said, what if we do this, move it over here, and da-da. Now you got the view of the beautiful mountains and everything. Like, wow, I never thought of that. So contractors can be your best friend. They can make a deal or they can break a deal. And the way to kind of keep them in line, that's kind of a tough phrase, but to make the journey a lot smoother is have that roadmap clearly, easily defined.
Yep. It really will save you headaches over time. I don't like getting in fights with people. I don't like arguing with people. It drives me nuts, and it goes both ways, guys, okay? Recently, we were having trouble. We were coming up with paint colors, and I thought I had chosen a paint color for this property, which I had, but I couldn't remember the details of it, just at that fact. So I texted my contractor. I said, hey, this property doesn't look like it. These are the paint colors I chose. And he was like, yes, you did. And I said, oh, really? And basically he came back, texted me or sent me an email of exactly what I had told him to do. I said, oh, all right, you're right. I apologize. It's my fault. And we're moving on. And that's how easy it is when it's in writing, when it's communication is really important. If you only communicate through voice and you don't put it on writing, it gets out of line because people forget things, right? I forgot what I ate for breakfast today. Jim forgot what he ate for dinner last night. We forget things. Okay?
I forgot my hat this morning. I had to go back home.
Yeah, Jim was friggin' half an hour late. We were blowing money, and Jim wasn't anywhere around. I was like, all right. I was about to do my own podcast without him, which I might have to do someday. But that's the type of stuff that you really want to make sure is in writing and communicate that. And it probably goes through life, too, with your spouse or your girlfriend or your husband or wife or kids. Maybe putting it in writing is a great way to do it. So keep track of that stuff.
Yeah. And as you get into the project, you got the keys, you've turned him loose, you've given his money. If you're in the area, visit the house. We tell our students, if you can, maybe 2-3 times a week, get in there and see what's going on. Make sure they're on track. And we got a thing called what we call is Pizza Friday. And I did that to a house that day. How many people you got there? Don't bring lunch tomorrow. Pizza's on me. I bring pizza and sodas. And hang out with them and eat with them. You add a personal touch. And I go, Tim's pretty cool. He brought us lunch. He hung out with us. He talked to us like we're human beings. They'll just bend over and work a little bit harder for you than if you're all cold and down strictly to business. You're not going to be their best friend. No. But be human and treat our workers. And they do hard work. And when you walk into the house,
Right.
They smile. Hey, Jim, welcome back,
No alcohol.
No alcohol.
No
never.
beer Friday. No taking the guys out for beers. It just is a bad combo. You don't need to do it. Just make sure, keep it above board and PG.
Yep. And
So-
we've got one GC that we absolutely love. He's working on, he was working on 3 houses at one time. And he's got his own crew, and we just love him to death because we went into the house one day, and there was like 10 people in there doing tile in the bathroom, working in the kitchen, scraping up floor. And Tim's like, there's too many people in here. This makes me nervous, And the guy was like, these are all my crew. We're all like family, and we work well together. And every time I've gone on, he always had a house full of people. And he would split them up. Okay, go to property 1. You 2 go to property 2. You go to property 3. And he was always right around working it. So
Right.
when you find a good GC, treat him right, and he'll last a little bit longer.
Mm-hmm. All right. So, folks, thanks for being here. Invest Success is a full year commitment, full year program. We teach you how to find it, fund it, fix it, flip it, do it over and over again. We have classes at properties being flipped. So every other Monday night, we are in a property being flipped. It's not a sales gimmick. It's truly to find out and learn how to do this business. We have weekly coaching calls. We have a property tour once a month where we go see 2 active properties and learn how to estimate the rehab cost. In the first one, we spend about 2 hours. In the second one, you've got about 15 minutes to see if you can come up with some kind of price. Really hands-on. Also, we're on speed dial. So if you find a project or a property and you want us to come look at it, if it's a deal, we'll look at it on the computer and then we'll decide whether it's a deal, and then we can come out, look at it, and we can help you figure out how to negotiate, how to talk about it. It's a great program, year long. We do have a 90-day version for somebody who's more experienced, who has done this before and just wants some information about it and so fill in some cracks and really get a hands-on view of what's going on. We've had a couple people sign up after they've done 6 or 7 flips. They got into a bad one. They wanted to know why. They came back to us and we went through it. And then we have a boot camp coming up here later on in the year. We'll take 3 days, go over all our material, go walk a couple properties, go see some active properties in a location. Some of them are in Denver, some of them are out of state, but really get hands-on. So really come out and check that stuff out because it's really in-depth and hand-on teaching. And we want you to walk out of our program being able to invest in real estate in any way possible. So,
Yep. And you've listened to the entire podcast. I'm going to throw this out real quick. Thank you for listening. If you're interested in our program, we'll extend to you a discount of $1,500, $1,500. Just say, hey, when you sign up for the free class, all our class, first class is free. Say, Jim, I want to save $1,500. I watched your podcast. But we will do more of these soon, and we hope to see you at one of our happy hours, the Breakfast Club, and call us if you just want to talk real estate. We love talking real estate.
Yeah. In the meantime, go out and do a deal.